Coming up, in this week's political segment, we talk all things elections with ICT political correspondent Pauly Denetclaw and contributor Michael Stopp. Plus, a Chilkat woman in Alaska is raising environmental awareness through weaving. And we drop by a local Indigenous-owned coffee shop centering and celebrating Diné creatives in Phoenix, Arizona. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Lani Hotch comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidawahopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Lani Hotch. We start today in Hawaii, where lawmakers have opened a new legislative session. At the top of this year's critical issues to address are the Lahaina wildfires that killed over 100 people last year. On the agenda was fire prevention and affordable housing for thousands of displaced residents. According to Senate President Ron Cauchi, fire mitigation is a top Senate priority, and the Senate wants to make sure this doesn't happen on any other island. Over 2,000 structures burned in Lahaina, including businesses, homes, churches, museums, and the historic courthouse. Residents, many of which are Native Hawaiian, continue to stay in hotels paid for by the Federal Emergency Management Agency because they can't find places to rent, and this funding will run out in 2025. Prioritized water use for affordable housing, limiting vacation rentals, and increasing mental health care were among other items on the agenda. The Senate's Health Committee expressed concerns that the longer the victims of the Maui fires remain unstable, the higher the potential for suicides and increased mental health problems are going to be. In Pennsylvania, a local school district is reinstating its Native American mascot and logo. The logo for the Southern York County School District depicts a Native American fighter. The logo was retired in April of 2021, but last week the district school board voted 7-2 to reinstate the logo, criticized as insensitive by the public. The decision was made after a 2-hour public comment session with those who felt the logo is not racist, as well as supporters who were citing the importance of history. Well, plans for a new Indigenous-led technology factory are underway in Canada. In a partnership with the lithium battery company Energy Plug and the Malahat First Nation, the new gigafactory would increase economic development for the region and nation. A gigafactory is one that produces and manufactures electric and rechargeable batteries on a large scale. In a 51% ownership agreement, the Malahat First Nation would be responsible for building the facility, while Energy Plug would provide leadership, sales, finances, and other internal systems. Negotiations have yet to be concluded for the project. Once built, the factory will be used for research on lithium, nickel, cobalt, and other batteries. It is expected to open in 2025. Over 90 youth from the Northern Cheyenne Nation are undertaking a 400-mile run, retracing their ancestors' harrowing path to freedom in South Dakota. In 1878, more than 149 Cheyenne from the Chief Dull Knife's band were confined at Fort Robinson in northwestern Nebraska. A year after being captured, they broke free and embarked on a dangerous journey toward the Black Hills. For the past 25 years, descendants of these brave Cheyenne have run the same path on the anniversary of this historic breakout. This year, the youth are continuing this tradition. That is in spite of temperatures below 0 degrees, snow, and dangerous wind chill. For the Northern Cheyenne youth, their run stands as a living tribute to their ancestors' spirit in the face of adversity. Well, a new exhibit is bringing native astronomy to a major museum. The Hayden Planetarium Space Theater in New York City will have a new event as part of its Astronomy Live series. The event, titled Indigenous Astronomy as Told by the Haudenosaunee, will be open to the public starting on February 20th. The exhibition plans to share the Haudenosaunee creation story told by Oneida astronomer Samantha Doxeter. It will also share more about how the stars are part of daily life. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. On this week's political segment, we are meeting our new ICT regular contributor, Michael Stopp. Let's go now to ICT political correspondent, Pauly Denetclaw.
Hello and welcome back to the ICT Newscast, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
For our regular viewers, they may remember you from election night in 2022, but for those new viewers who have just joined us, Michael, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Michael Stopp. I am a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and also of Muskogee Creek descent. I went to West Point early on, spent some time in the Army, and then got into politics and policy. My first job in Washington, D.C. was actually working for the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, and I ultimately left Washington policy and politics as the chief of staff for now Senator Markwayne Mullin, the only Native in the Senate. I left there and started a company basically working on economic development in Indian country, helping companies work with tribes and navigate the challenges that tribal governments can sometimes throw up.
And can you talk to us a little bit about, when you first were coming up and why you decided to pursue a career in politics and be a part of this field?
So to be honest, it was actually my veteran status that got me more into policy making. I didn't feel with what was going on in Operation Enduring Freedom or Operation Iraqi Freedom was actually good for our veterans or good for our service members. And so I got more involved in the politics there, talking about a reduction in the war effort, and definitely those who were deployed, they needed the services when they got back. The VA, and this is a bipartisan thing, has become much better, I think, in this generation of soldiers. So I was very happy to be a part of that. But I will tell you that growing up, I never really felt Indian because I grew up around other Indians my whole life. My dad worked in Indian country for multiple tribes and IHS. So it wasn't different to me. It wasn't until I went to West Point and started working in public policy where there weren't a lot of natives that I realized that there was a little bit different. So that also drew me into Indian law and federal Indian policy. When I was at West Point, we actually started the Native American Heritage Forum, which the whole purpose was to educate cadets about Native Americans in the military service, about our history, about our culture, and to help bring Native cadets kind of a brotherhood, a fraternity to help them inculcate to the academy. So in my class, there were only 3 natives out of 1,200 cadets.
And thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. Now, moving into the White House, can you talk to us a little bit about some of what the surprises have been this election cycle? Namely, Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the race. And can you talk a little bit about how that has impacted the election?
Well, I think it is even more clear today than it was 2 weeks ago that we have a front runner in the Republican Party, and it is Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis came out strong about 6 to 9 months ago. Everyone thought he was going to be a real competitor with Trump. I would say that when people got to know him better and in person, he just didn't have the personality, and it didn't come across well, especially someone as vibrant as Donald Trump. It's hard to compete with that. He came across as trying to be Trump light in a Republican Party that is still very pro-Trump. And quite frankly, he had some real mechanical issues in his campaign. They made a lot of mistakes, and I personally am not a big fan of Jeff Rowe, and I think a lot of strategies they took didn't help them win the trust of the voters or tell them, yes, we have another option. So I think there are a number of factors against Ron DeSantis.
And what were some of the reasons why you think DeSantis, the New Hampshire primaries were last night, and he had stated that in Iowa he was going to go into the New Hampshire primary, but then did drop out. So what do you think were some of the contributing factors of that decision?
I will guarantee you that a big part of that contributing factor is going to be donors. Donors are going to look at him and say, we don't see a path to victory. The poll numbers that we were seeing prior to New Hampshire had Ron DeSantis in a dismal third place. Nikki Haley went in with the whole point of hoping to win New Hampshire, and she had a bigger ground game in New Hampshire than Ron DeSantis did. Ron DeSantis put all of the efforts into Iowa and still came 30 points shy of beating Donald Trump, even though he was in all of their counties and did the traditional politicking that's expected for the Iowa caucuses. He still did poorly. Knowing that, and knowing that he didn't put the attention into New Hampshire that he needed to, I have no doubt that his donors are telling him, we're done. We don't see a path to victory. It's time for you to step aside. And I'm sure he saw the same thing.
And we did see an increase in votes for Nikki Haley last night at the New Hampshire primary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was closer than what people were predicting. I think that they haven't finished all the counts, but I saw she's only behind by about 11%. And I think the numbers were closer to 20 at one point. But I think that you also have to look at the total number of votes cast compared to 2016 and 2020. They had record turnout in New Hampshire. And a lot of people don't understand how the New Hampshire primary works. You don't have to be a Republican to cast a vote in the New Hampshire primary. And so it is possible for someone who's a Democrat or an independent to cast a vote and skew it. So that was the concern for the Trump campaign and others, wondering, are they going to come in and try to undercut Trump? Well, they may have, but it wasn't enough of an effort. Trump got a record number of Republican votes for himself that last night. And, the electorate, at least the people on the right and the left, not the mushy middle who really make the decisions in this country, but the people on the right and left are energized this election cycle. And I think we talked about this in another story. It's going to be interesting to see how the independents vote and how the moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans vote, because normally in primaries you see the extremes, and the extremes are coming out. You saw something else unprecedented last night, and that was a write-in campaign for President Joe Biden. It is unusual for someone to win a write-in campaign like that and get over 50% of the vote. So there are a couple of interesting things about New Hampshire. It shows that the bases are energized. But again, in November, the people who make the decision are those in the middle, the independents and the moderate conservatives and liberals.
Well, thank you so much for joining the ICT Newscast, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me.
We head now to Alaska, where an Alaska Native woman is telling stories through weaving. The Native Arts and Cultures Foundation is honoring Lani Hotch for her work in traditional Chilkat and Raven's Tail weaving. The most important story she shares is the importance of salmon to her family's way of life. ICT's Shirley Sneve has the story.
People ask, why I weave, and it's because I think part of it was it's in my bones to do it. I think I inherited that desire from my grandmothers, my mother, my grandmothers, and I want to pass it on. So I enjoy it, though. I think weaving is not for everybody, because you have to have a lot of patience. And you have to have a lot of perseverance, because it's not something you can do in 2 days. You have to spend hundreds of hours to weave. And even before you weave, it takes a lot of prep, to come up with your design and get your layout and gather your materials. And and all of that. And then to sit hundreds of hours in isolation, weaving is not for everybody. My husband has been taking the lead for our tribe to protect the Chilkat River. Cluckwan is situated on the north bank of the Chilkat River, and we're actually at the confluence of 3 rivers, the Chilkat, the Klahini, and the Cherokee. And our river, our watershed, and our way of life is currently being threatened by a mine. It's called the Palmer Project, or the Constantine mine. So I thought this would be a good way to support his efforts and do my part in protecting the river too, in our way of life.
It sounds to me like this is something that has been passed down through the generations in your family.
Yes, with my daughter Katrina and my daughter Jenny, them learning to weave, that spans 5 generations that we know of. There could have been more, but I don't know that far back. When I first started learning from Cheryl Samuel, who wrote the book on the Chilkat dancing blanket, she had studied weavings all over the world and figured out how to weave in our style. She had came and taught classes in Cluckwan, and we wove little bags and then dance leggings, which were a little bigger. And then in the process of her teaching, she told us about some group projects, one that was in Juneau and one that was in Sitka. They're both in Southeast Alaska. And I was inspired by that. And when I was looking through her book on raven's tail weaving, I saw a picture of a robe that was collected from Lynn Canal, which is our immediate area here that we live in. And I thought, we should weave that as a group project. And so we asked her if she would help us, and she was kind of reluctant at first because it was a very complex weaving and she didn't think we were ready for it. But we just begged and begged her, and she gave in to that, and she helped us get it started. And she came back a few times to help us, get over some hurdles. And then once we reached the halfway point, she let us finish it ourselves. It did have issues, but it still turned out beautiful, and we're proud of it. And it gets used quite a bit in our culture. In fact, after we finished it, our tribe adopted part of the healing robe design as the tribe's logo.
What shape is the river in these days?
It's still in good shape. Our partnering organization, Tuxnuk Watershed Council, they are monitoring the river, and they take samples all the time, and they count the fish, and they have little nets that they pull up and test the fish and everything. So it's being monitored very closely. We inherited an earth that was pretty good, and we should leave it in good shape for our descendants, for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. I think we have an obligation, a responsibility to do that. Those robes, when they're finished, will be on display in the Chilkat Heritage Center, and we'll be there to help tell our story and for the future generations too, so that they will know that they have to do their part in protecting the river.
Shirley Sneve, ICT News.
One coffee shop in Phoenix, Arizona is brewing up coffee with the side of Diné tradition and innovation. ICT's Quindrea Yazzie has more for us.
This isn't just any shop. Imagine entering and being immediately greeted by the comforting aromas of coffee beans and green thread Diné tea. Skoden Coffee is an Indigenous-led and queer coffee shop centering and celebrating Diné creatives in Phoenix, Arizona. It is tucked in the front corner of a furniture and design store named For the People and has become a space to enjoy art with your coffee.
So you see like these curtains, these small drapes here, you see like, little things like these coffee cups with the spackle on them. You always see people at Jinje drinking out of these. We have like an old Folgers can here, and all of this was all intentional.
The sights and sounds are reminiscent of Grandma's place, where coffee is always brewing and ingredients are medicine. The menu here is a part of a matriarchal lineage.
One of our team members, Isabel, she's half Diné and half Hispanic. So like she likes the horchata, and it's like very close to her culture as well. So she really pushes that and it keeps that on the menu. And then like that's really good. So it incorporates like the Hispanic communities around us too, because they relate to that. And then we also let them know, have them try like other things on the menu and kind of like keep that circle, like that openness, because all of our histories are very similar in that way. And of course, like, even though we have a lot of Native people that come in that are Diné, a lot of them are still people of the land, the Pipash and the T'Oda Adam. So they'll come in and they'll give us like recommendations. So I think it's mainly just like having an open ear and listening to what our customer needs and want.
From the blue corn pastries down to the washi tape notes on the cups, such as land back or Skoden, the morphology of let's go then. Aside from that, it is also where people put innovation at the forefront.
So what we like to do is we like to follow like the seasons and what is being what's in season, like the produce. And we do that by doing some research, kind of like going back about what's going on, like who's growing stuff on the Navajo Nation as well. And then we do our research around here to see like, oh, there's small companies around us. We should prioritize their business versus going to like buying bulks at like the grocery store. And of course, like customers come in and they give us recommendations as well.
The coffee shop honors the journey of reconnection, reclamation, and restoring the balance back to Mother Earth. Reporting from the Acamel O'odham and Hohokam lands in Phoenix, Arizona, Quindrea Yazi, ICT News.
The Reno Sparks Indian Colony consists of over 1,000 tribal citizens from the 3 Great Basin tribes, including the Paiute, Shoshone, and Washoe. ICT Shirley Sneve takes us to northern Nevada to learn more about the legacy of the tribe's leader who is stepping back.
After 36 years of leadership, a groundbreaking chairman is retiring. Arlen Melendez started on the Reno Sparks Indian Colony Council and was elected chairman 32 years ago. He introduced innovative approaches to growth.
When I first started back in 1987, we were like many of the Nevada tribes. We didn't have gaming because Nevada's a gaming state. And, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act was just being passed. And it was too competitive here in Reno, where they have all kind of casinos and similar to Las Vegas. So competing with corporations nowadays is pretty difficult.
Instead of creating jobs and revenue through gaming, the tribe generates income through taxation of businesses located on trust land.
Businesses on a reservation, like Walmart, and we have auto dealerships in South Reno, and we took land in the trust. And so we used tax money to purchase land, bring businesses to the reservation, and in turn generate tax money. We worked on an agreement with the state of Nevada to be able to keep the tax.
Lithium mining on the tribe's ancestral lands is an issue.
It would be in the best interest if the mining was put on hold, but by the time you would get through to appeal, they would have already desecrated all of the sacred sites. So there's no sense trying to do that now. We were trying to orchestrate some injunctions in the early stages to stop it so that we could have proper consultation, but that never really happened.
The fight continues under new leadership.
The chairman now, who's going to be sworn in, Doug Gardepy. He was the vice chairman to me a couple times, so he has experience. So I feel good about that. And we have some councilmen that are experienced that are coming on board too. It should work out pretty well for them if they just kind of keep their vision, and try to avoid conflicts internally. And I think that's one of the things that other tribes have looked at us, is that we keep moving forward with economic development and don't try to get bogged down in internal conflicts. That's the thing that really will stop your tribe, if everybody's after one another or jealous or whatever it may be. And I think if you can avoid that and keep going forward, I think it works out really well.
Shirley Sneve, ICT News.
36 years of leadership. What a long legacy. And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.